Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. So it's been a pretty quiet time since The Acolyte finished. We all kind of anticipated this. There hasn't been a lot of news, but we do have a few things to talk about for this video. Before we dive into it, just a quick thing. If you've not done so, please help me out and click the big subscribe button down below, and make sure you ring the bell to be alerted every time that I post a new video. But no more jibber jabber, let's begin. We've got some major Star Wars movie news, and make sure you stay to the end of the video because they're re-releasing the entire saga except for one film at the end of this year. But first, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Do you guys remember when we spoke about how Dune 3 is going to release on the same day as one of the Star Wars movies in 2026? Even though originally it was meant to be the Rey film, I think it's going to be pushed back. So The Mandalorian and Grogu either releases in May or in December. Now if Mando and Grogu wanted to avoid Dune, it's got a problem releasing in May, because Avengers Doomsday is releasing the same very day, so Mando regardless has a lot of competition. And here's what's interesting, Pedro Pascal features in both. This comes after a massive reveal for Marvel fans yesterday. I'm really happy for Marvel fans who are pleased with this announcement, but as a Star Wars fan, come on, when is it our time to have another win? I'm reminded of the excitement going into The Rise of Skywalker when we heard Palpatine's laugh at the end of the trailer. Yes, that movie had its problems, but Star Wars fans were pretty excited after The Last Jedi. And then Ian McDiarmid comes out on stage and says, "Roll it again." And everyone went wild. We need another one of those moments. You know what I think, and I know this is going to be very controversial, and I promise guys I will get back on topic. They need to announce Samuel L. Jackson coming back as an old, decrepit Mace Windu. Samuel L. Jackson wants to do it, and even George Lucas admitted Mace Windu survived the electrocution and the fall. And if you're an OG fan of this channel, then you'll remember all of the theories I made back in 2021, going into Book of Boba Fett. We may have been wrong, but I still believe Mace lived. Casual fans especially would go crazy. I'd love to see him reprise the role as Mace. Anyway, this is bad news for Mando and Grogu because it kind of reminds me of the Solo situation in 2018, when it released between Infinity War and Deadpool 2. I'm hoping Mando and Grogu doesn't underperform for the same reason, but we just have to wait and see. A lot can happen between now and then. Star Wars needs a return to greatness and needs a return to relevance in the pop culture space. Star Wars needs a win. Pedro Pascal features in both, so regardless, he's gonna receive a massive paycheck. Pedro Pascal did speak on the subject of Mando, but more so to do with the fact a Grogu doll was being passed amongst fans. So he made the joke that Grogu is in his party phase.
God, he's in his party phase.
Is that okay?
Baby Yoda's in his party phase.
But it should be noted, usually Pedro Pascal is very adamant to call him Grogu, and he's always saying please don't call him Baby Yoda, but he himself slipped up and called him Baby Yoda yesterday. Hopefully outside of doing the voice for Din Djarin, we will see him without his helmet. Now in other Mando news, I've been talking a lot about Star Wars comics. In between TV shows, they're a really good way to pass the time as a Star Wars fan, and I like to bring up various theories, various reveals in my videos. Well today, we're going to be talking about something I mentioned back in 2020, when Din Djarin, Mithril, Greef Karga, and Cara Dune discovered the Imperial Remnants cloning facility on Navarro. Based on the music, based on what Dr. Pershing was saying in a hologram, we all made the assumption this was part of Palpatine's contingency. These, in some way, shape or form, were Proto-Snokes. But when the third season came out, 3 years later, we found out Moff Gideon was trying to clone himself, trying to make Force-sensitive clones of himself. And this, for all intents and purposes, ruled out the Snoke theory. But at the time, I asserted, I think something changed behind the scenes. There was a lot of stuff that happened between 2020 and 2023. Rangers of the New Republic was cancelled, the Mandalorian spin-off novel was cancelled, and there was a lot of rethinking in terms of the story. Now, given the fact we know Brendol Hux and Rey Sloane are the 2 remnants who are going to bring Palpatine back, whatever was happening on Navarro may have been a test, but it wasn't what was going to lead to Snoke. That's further down the line in the unknown regions. But like I say, it could have been many tries outside of Exegol. And I believe there is evidence this is what Jon and Dave intended. The Mandalorian Chapter 12 was trying to show us a cloning lab linked to the Remnants projects, and not necessarily Gideon's own cloning. And they now seem to confirm this, not just with the concept art, but also with the comic adaptation of The Mandalorian Season 2. If you look at the specimens in the cloning tanks, these more resemble an attempt to bring back Palpatine than they do Moff Gideon. I don't know if they're ever going to explain why this changed, but my theory is that, in-universe, they might explain how Gideon was originally part of what Hux is doing, and did originally try to help with Palpatine coming back, but after the destruction of the Navarro cloning lab, he turned his attention to cloning himself, which he may have started working on before Season 2. This lab could be unrelated, but what I'm trying to say is, when this episode came out, the intent was to show us one thing is leading to another. They were teasing the sequel trilogy further down the line. These were not originally going to be Gideon clones, but instead, proto-clones of Palpatine, ones which fail. The successful clones would emerge from the unknown regions on Exegol, but they were trying to show us the Remnant had been working on this project for decades. It'd be a long time until they had any kind of success. I think the Mandoverse was trying to show us some of those early failures, and I've never been more convinced that was originally in the plans. I don't know if the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is going to clear this up. Din Djarin might come across more of these across the galaxy, but I'm very confident Moff Gideon's plans were never originally to clone himself. That seems like something they changed to be written for the 3rd season. The ones in the comics are robed. The head shape was kind of Palpatine's Snoke-esque, and it reminds me of one of my favourite comics, Dark Empire from the Expanded Universe. I never had a problem with Palpatine returning, and was hoping The Mandalorian was going to give us some more context. It still could, but what do you guys think of this? And so now, my dear friends, if you're in the UK, Star Wars is re-releasing almost every single Star Wars movie this coming autumn. I've already booked my tickets, and in particular, aside from my favourite trilogy, the prequel trilogy, I'm very much anticipating seeing the sequels again. They're my least favourite trilogy, and I've not spent much time with them since they came out, especially The Last Jedi. I'll give you my verdict when they release, and we'll do a kind of 2024 retrospective. But the one that's making the news is Solo: A Star Wars Story. It's the only movie they're not re-releasing, and they're doing Rogue One. Once again, Han Solo gets snubbed. I think the logic is because back in 2018 it lost money, they don't want to bet on a re-release. We know Kathleen Kennedy has spoken about Solo being a big mistake, how they don't want to do that kind of thing again, but this piece of news is pretty interesting. Even though Solo did really badly at the box office, its reputation and fan club has improved, but clearly not enough. They don't want to risk anything. The chain Odeon, who's doing this re-release, is naturally aware of Solo's poor box office performance, and so they're not paying to re-release the film even for one day, out of fear it's going to flop once again. But the thing is, for many reasons, Solo has become something of a cult classic amongst fans. Lucasfilm wanting to move away from it could be the reason why Lando, which is now set to be a movie and not a show, has been pushed back, and why Kira has been relegated to the comics and video games.